Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about joy. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, hi Frederick, what would you say is the part of software development that gives you joy? I would say it is when I get to see something that I made turn out really well. And that's pretty much it, really. Most of the rest of it sort of sucks, to be frank with you. But that part I really enjoy. It's the it's the joy part. It's the thing that makes me happy. The thing that I need, because otherwise I don't know what I would do with myself, is also a factor for me. I wouldn't say that it gives me, well, maybe it is joy. I don't know exactly how to define it, but I get a lot of, let's call it, I get a lot of satisfaction and personal, like it makes it worth it when I see that something turns out really well. And the thing that usually makes me satisfied, or the thing that makes me continue doing this thing because I think it's fun, is because I crave constant, almost constant mental stimulation. I can't really well, to put it this way, I'm the sort of guy who I would rather have a million things to do than I would have than like being bored or something like that. I could not imagine something worse, and I actually, if it wasn't because I knew it was a complete coincidence, I would have suspected my dad for plotting this against me when I was a kid, because I took a summer job, I still remember it, at his factory where like they have these assembly lines basically, and one of the stations was just literally standing there every single day for all of summer and pulling a piece of plastic to exactly 180 centimeters and then cutting it. Some days it was just 80 centimeters, but that was the entire job, and I did that, and I hated every second of it. And it made me realize that I am not the sort of person who can do something that is has basically no mental stimulation. I need something to think about. I need things to reflect on, which is why I love software development, because it's that perfect. It puts me in a state where most of my time just goes into figuring out how to structure the code, or how to solve things, or how something works and how I can improve it, or how I can fix things, and so forth and so forth. It gives me, like, it basically takes up all of my thought process and so forth. And so that gives me a great deal of it's something I really need. Without it, I don't know what to do, really. I've actually asked myself that many times before, what would I do if I wasn't a software developer? And I sort of come back to that I would have to find something else where the amount of knowledge that I can collect is basically endless, and that I find like genuine satisfaction in, as I said, seeing the results of what I do. That's the thing that gives me the joy, though. So to give you an example, from today, it's such a silly little thing, but it makes a world of difference to me. So I took over as a, what is it called? It's like a technical product manager type. I mean, like, they make up these titles for me at this point. I think that they're making them up, because I'm supposed to be staff engineer. I don't know. Anywho, it's supposed to be a role which in effect gives me some type of responsibility over a product within the company that I'm working for. And the idea being that I don't actually know how this is in any way different from being just a tech lead, but in this case it's a shared role between basically all the other stuff that I have to do. But in this specific project, this is a front-end thing, and so the code is structured in such a way which basically is like long term it's going to be practically unmaintainable, because no one under the sun seems to be able to write React code in a sustainable way. And so when I started working on like a few features and so forth, I basically figured out very quickly that if I wanted to do basic unit testing or anything like that, I'm going to have to refactor these things. And I made a video a while back about this exact thing, where I say like this is not even a question for me at this point. It's, to me, the satisfaction that I get comes from seeing that someone has structured one of, let's say, their components, that this, like, they have a million hooks and like a bunch of logic and so forth. It's all untested, of course, and basically impossible to test, because they segment their gigantic super components in like these big chunks, which, you know, if you wanted to write a unit test for anything here, you're basically forced to test the entire page. And so what I usually do is that I take a look at this thing and I go, all right, let's break that out into smaller subcomponents. And what I usually do is that I basically just take an arbitrary element, which might be, you know, a segment on the page, and I find a nice name for it. I move that into a separate file, and then usually I see that, oh cool, a bunch of stuff went yellow now, or like red in this new file, and there are all the hooks, there's all the logic in this gigantic super thing, right, that is supposed to only to be for that component. And then I move that to my new shiny little like new file, and all of a sudden that gigantic super file like reduced in size fairly quickly. And now I have this smaller little component that I can test. I can set up like all the things that I want and make sure that it's sustainable, that it has its functionality, to like the functional tests and all of that good stuff that I need for it. And then when I do that a few times, I am left with a very clean, nice component that is sustainable, that can be tested, that can be put into like some visual, like if you're using Storybook or something like that, it can easily be used and so forth, because it follows what I consider most of the, you know, the tried and true methods of structuring code. This is not just for front end, but the same thing goes for like back end, or like dealing with classes or something like that. To me, it's a little bit like spring cleaning in a sense. It gives me personal satisfaction to feel like this was now a little bit nicer. And that when I see that these sorts of investments or these initiatives that I can take, not just at the code level, even like if it's like architectural things or so forth, and I see things starting to come together, that brings me a great deal of personal satisfaction. So what I want you to take away from this is that the thing that gives me joy about software development is when I see the solutions that I come up with, or see something just sort of come together. That is deeply satisfying to me. It's like watching, you know, a perfect cube being put in a like this tiny little space where it's just perfectly just fits in there. It's just it's like a primal thing. It's just really nice to see clean, nicely written code. Works, it follows all the quote-unquote best, well, I'm not saying all the best practices, that would be an anti-pattern, but I hope that you see what I'm going for. It's maintainable, it's understandable, it's not too big, it's not too small, it's just perfectly segmented so that it makes sense, at least to me. And I know that it's going to work because I have tested it for all the cases and so forth, and I know that there's not going to be an issue for somebody else to pick this up and sort of immediately digest how it works and continue the work is necessary. I feel like I've done my part right. That's the thing that gives me the most joy. And the second part, as I said, is that I really need this sort of stuff for myself, because I don't get anything from small talking with people about arbitrary things that have no like mental curiosity for me. Like I will sit all day and talk your ear off if you have something to tell me about something that is interesting, that related to if you're doing something interesting, if you have a job that I find interesting, or if you have some nice philosophical ideas, or you have a view on politics, or anything like that. But I'd rather never ever, like, I would, if I could avoid it for the rest of my life, I would just avoid situations where I have to do something as mundane as listen to what the last week's sports results were, or like hear about things that I feel like have no stimulation for me, because I crave having something to think about at all times. And that's why software is so perfect for myself, because it gives me that in endless amounts. I could spend the rest of my life trying to learn everything, and I'm not going to be able to. And that is, yeah, it gives me it scratches the mental itch that I have for basically continuously being in the zone, being in a situation where I have to think about, how do I do this, how do I figure this out, and so forth. It gives me deep satisfaction, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. Have a great day.